Shanti Shanti.
After investigating into the world, they found that it is always in a cyclic. That is why we have cyclic time. Everything is cyclic here, because causality, as long as you are in causality, cause and effect chain will be there. Everything is cyclic. That is why in our Shastras time is cyclic. It is not like Western linear time as they used to think. But they understood that if we have to go beyond this causal chain, beyond this cyclic way of everything happening, we have to go into the subject where all these are taking place. So let us first go into our personality and find out where from the perceptions are really coming, where they are operating, who am I? That became their quest. So in that process they discovered that everything is subjective. Even whatever world we are seeing, it is depending on our 5 indriyas. If we had 8 indriyas, for us the world would have been different. We may use microscope, telescope, everything, but the final output has to be perceived by our sense organs. And we have 5 sense organs according to that. That is why our Panchabhuta remains for this, how many thousands of years we don't know, 10,000, 20,000, 5,000, whatever it is. This Panchabhuta has never changed to Shashtabhuta or Saptabhuta or 4-bhuta, nothing. It remains Panchabhuta. As long as our personality has got 5 indriyas, our Shastras will continue with 5 Panchabhutas. It depends the perception of the 5 indriyas. Each is related to 1 indriya perception. Like that we have defined the Panchabhutas. So our world is actually a subjective, is a result of our perception. That is imprinted everywhere. So after they have discussed that from this consciousness is born our personality, all the 5 indriyas, mana, prana, everything. They are saying even the kham, vayu, jyotihi, etc. also born of it. Whatever we are seeing, unless we have that corresponding indriya, that would not have been like this. So the whole world as we perceive are coming out of this same self, the one self, the one consciousness in us. Then thereafter from the 4th verse, it will continue. That I will go very fast because they use various allegories to expand our mind. Because why are we finding difficult to conceive of this truth? Because our mind is limited by small things. So again coming back to a lower level, they try to expand our mind, saying that Agnir Murdha Chakshushi Chandra Surya. That is for this consciousness, as if the Chandra and Surya are the 2 eyes, which are most prominent. And it is the Agni, the energy is its Murdha. That is, you expand that Virata Purusha, we say, that the personality we expand to the whole universe. And such conceptions are given. Like that again, then they will come back to the sadhana points, which we would like to discuss in more detail. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaha. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaha. Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha. Sthirairangaistuštuvamsastanubhihi Vyashema devahitam yadayuhu Swasti na indro vruddhashavaha Swasti na pusha vishvavedaha Swasti nastaksho arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir dadhatu शान्तिः तदेतत् सत्यम् यथा सुदीप्तात् पावकाद् विस्फुलिङ्गाः सहस्रशः प्रभवन्ते सरूपाः तथाक्षरात् विविधाः सौम्यभावाः प्रजायन्ते तत्र चैवापि यन्ति दिव्यो ह्यमूर्तः पुरुषः स बाह्याभ्यन्तरो ह्यजः अप्राणो ह्यमनाः शुभ्रो ह्यक्षरात् परतः परः एतस्माज्जायते प्राणो मनः सर्वेन्द्रियाणि च खं वायुर्ज्योतिरापः पृथिवी विश्वस्य धारिणी. We did up to this. We will read a few more verses now. Agnirmurdha chakshushi chandra suryo dishashrotre vag vivritascha vedah वायुः प्राणो हृदयं विश्वमस्य पद्भ्यां पृथिवी हि सर्वभूतान्तरात्मा. See, yesterday we discussed to some extent we cannot go into the all details of shloka and all. My purpose in taking these classes is to, if at all it is possible, to indicate to you how these Upanishads have to be studied for our own sadhana, how they have to be applied to our own sadhana. So we have to keep in mind and understand some fundamental points the Upanishads are trying to drive in us. That is all necessary to treat our worldliness, that habitually right from birth we are trapped by the worldliness. We are trapped by the slavery to world objects, world situations. You understand the slavery, that whenever something little goes wrong anywhere outside, immediately our mind gets upset. We get agitated. We lose our temper even. What does it mean? Somebody said something, little abusive something or wrong something, maybe some blaming something. Somebody uttered something. Immediately we lose our temper and we fight back, we say so many things. Does it not mean that we are absolutely slave to the world situations? Whatever anybody has said, if it is true, I should be thankful to him because he has pointed out some defect or something. If it is untrue, then why should I worry about it? It is his business. He might have said because of some other reason. He is agitated, maybe that is why he said. So why should it agitate my mind? That means whatever happens to the surroundings, the situations, immediately we are slave to the situations. The moment it is not to our liking, not to our expectation, not to our desired standard, immediately we lose our stability, poise, everything. it means we are absolutely slave to the circumstances. So there are 3-4 points I would mention. The one part is to gain mastery over the world, you can say over the objective world. And how can we gain mastery over the objective world? Not by becoming very powerful, very rich, very influential. No, we are not talking of that kind of mastery. There is no limit to that, and with that also nobody can become master of the world. We can become master of the world by becoming master of ourselves, our own mind and intelligence. That when the mind and intelligence become absolutely stable, that anything happening in the world will not be able to take away our poise or destabilize us, then we will say we have become master of the world. That means there will be a readiness in the mind to accept anything happening. I don't say that you should not see that the situation is rectified. Suppose the building falls, we have to rectify the building, that is okay. But the moment the building falls, we lose our poise. Oh, क्या हो गया, हमारा क्या होगा, वो क्या होगा, कोई मर गया तो वो ही है, कुछ भी हुआ. We are immediately, completely overwhelmed by the circumstance. But if we accept, there is a readiness of the mind to accept everything, then this instability will not come. This loss of poise, this agitation, this affectation will not be there. And with that unaffectedness, we will be able to set right to the extent possible, the best possible. Because when we are agitated, we will not be able to set right the situation well. But when we are not agitated, when we are stable, when we are poised, then only we can perform best and we can set right the situation also to the best of our ability. And if some portion cannot be set right, we will be ready to accept that also. So, all this entire spirituality is trying to make us master of the world. In other words, as Swamiji says, that unaffectedness is spirituality. How to measure whether we are growing spiritually or not? Everybody asks that, what do you think, you are seeing my behavior, have I grown in spiritual sadhana? You need not have to ask. It is for us to see, look within our mind and find out whether I have grown or not. How do you know? You check your affectedness, unaffectedness. That earlier in the similar situation, what was I getting more affected? Now I can remain more stable, more poised in same situation. You can judge yourself. So we have to judge our progress. Similarly, selfishness. Earlier, was I more selfish or have I become more selfish now? Spirituality means expansion. This I have been telling always. It's a thumb rule. That where we start, we think ourselves to be small, limited by the body, mind, personality. That is, our I is a small I. We start with that. That everybody has that I. But the spirituality, the Vedanta, the Upanishads, they say that this identity is a wrong identity. It is a covered identity. It's a delusional identity. The real identity is universal. There is no two souls at all. There is only one soul, if at all we use the word one. And the whole universe is appearing in the soul. So the soul is universal. Now, if you say that I we are thinking is small, constricted, limited by the body, mind, personality, and the real I is universal, then what is the sadhana? It is simply a sadhana of expansion. How can the small thing become big and finally infinity? It's only through a process of expansion. So whatever thoughts, whatever actions, whatever steps lead us to expansion, that is spirituality. So that we have to judge. Nobody from outside they cannot say. They can have some idea, but the real judgment will be from us. That we have to look within and find out whether the mind has become less selfish or not, whether I have become more expanded, liberal. The more we become liberal, we will become lighter also. As we expand, we will become lighter, we will feel a strength within. These are the judgments to be followed. Now, you will find there is a problem with certain practices. Those who take, this is what we have found, it is our research, that those who take too much to meditation alone as sadhana, we have found that they generally become selfish. Or if not selfish, you can say self-centered. How much they have progressed or not is another. They may get into samadhi also, which is the ultimate of meditative practice. But they become very much selfish, self-centered. They don't want to do anything for the society. They refuse to do work for the society or what will be beneficial for others. They do only whatever they like. And in a dire situation when his participation is necessary, they would like to go into meditation. So much selfish and self-centered they become. I think that is how these Upanishads are the last word in spirituality. There are so many thousands of paths in spirituality practiced in our country. So many kinds of yoga, so many kinds of bhakti yoga, this, that and all practices, various things, so many paths are there. The Upanishads, they are called Vedanta, the last word in the knowledge. These people, the rishis, they must have seen the pitfalls of each practice. Why do they say that don't run after mysticism? Because already we are deluded by the world. It is enough of mysticism is there, magic is there in the world. Even to understand anything in the world, even ourselves also, if you have to understand, it is a great magic, so to say. How are we living every time? If we understand our brain and our circuitry and all, we should fall dead immediately. It is surprising that we are not dying. It is surprising that we are living. In death there is no surprise at all. It is so complicated. A transistor, just a circuit breaks and you cannot work with it. And in our body there are so many subtle and subtler circuits. Anything going anywhere a little wrong, we may fall dead. So what is so much there in having something which is not apparently normal? We run after mysticism. Some magic is shown. Immediately we run after that. Most of the people are like that. We run after magic, we run after mysticism. And we get diverted from the path. Now it is not only the rishis found that it is not just the individual is losing the auspicious goal and getting diverted by all these, say, spiritual power. Some people practice the Raja Yoga to attain some power. There are Ashta Siddhis are mentioned. So many people in our country, if you go around and find in the pilgrimage places and all, they are all running after Siddhis of different kind. By that what will happen? What will they gain? Will their mind become peaceful? Will they become universal? Nothing will happen. They will become more egoistic, more corrupt, more power oriented. You go around and find out. I have seen many. So, the rishis, they found that all these practices, there is a pitfall. It is not only diverting the individual from the auspicious goal, but it is taking the society towards destruction. Because whenever we encourage the tendencies of people which make them selfish or more selfish and compete with each other, these tendencies they lead to the destruction of the society. That is why they finally devised, they found out and they have constituted this Vedantic knowledge where each aspect of the individual as well as the society has been taken into consideration. It is for the individual auspicious final goal as well as for the society to become maximum sustained in an auspicious manner. That is how Indian civilization has lived for such a long period. Much, much more than unknown period, not available anywhere in the world, and we don't know how long. Because these were, if Upanishads were there 5,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 years back, you can understand this, how long it had taken to attain these lofty thoughts in a civilization which is living for 500, 400 or even 1,000 years. You don't find these lofty thoughts evolving there. So it had lived before that also. How long a period we don't know. From that experience over long period, they have culled out what is finally auspicious for the people. And that they have written down. Many of it must have got lost in the process of time. But whatever is there still, that is more than enough. In a lifetime we cannot finish. Even of one Upanishad, if few shlokas we understand, it is enough. So it is repeated. You will find that this repeated shlokas, repeating the same kind of things are there. So many people criticize that they are too repeated. Their repetition is too much. They don't understand that this Upanishads or spiritual books, they are not written for gaining just some knowledge from it. If we speak, the first shloka I said that, what is that? Yattadadreshyam. If that shloka is understood properly, then the Mundaka Upanishad further we need not read. That itself is sufficient. But why just about this imagery of giving an universal dimension, etc.? It is repeated. In Kathopanishad also you will find. So many times it has been told. Because it is not just to tell you that you are universal and whatever is Brahman, that is your Atman. This takes only very few words. Shankaracharya says it takes half a shloka. Shlokadhena pravakshyami yaduktam grantha kotibhi. I will tell you in half a shloka, which has been spoken of in crores of the granthas. I will tell you in half a shloka. What is that? Brahma satyam yagan mithya jivo brahmaiva naparaha. Half a shloka has gone in saying that I will tell you in half a shloka. So only half a shloka is left. And what is he saying? That Brahman is the truth, and whatever the world we are perceiving worldliness, that is mithya. Now we have to understand what is the meaning of mithya. Immediately don't say that Shankaracharya denounces the world. It's not like that. What is the meaning of mithya? We have to understand. And what is that? Jivo brahmaiva naparaha. That jiva we are saying in reference to the body. When we are associating our consciousness with the body, mind, personality, we are calling it jiva and we are thinking it is small, it is encapsulated by our personality. He says that that is not the true jiva. The jiva is nothing different from Brahman, which is the source of the entire universe. Even I told you so many days that source is not the correct word, because source means a cause for the universe. It's the substratum of the universe will be a better word, where the whole universe is appearing to be. It is not a material source from where the universe is springing out like Big Bang. So it takes only half a shloka to tell the truth. Then why the Upanishads are repeating certain things again and again in different forms, this form, that form? Because these studies have to be taken as a treatment to our mind. As in our daily practice, we are doing the same thing again and again and again. Are we not doing this? Morning we are getting up, brushing, we are going to the market, buying the same materials, more or less the same materials, this way or that way, cooking the same food. Maybe या मेनू रोज बदलते जाता है. क्या मेनू बदलेंगे? 2-3 तो वेजिटेबल है. एक दिन इधर से करेंगे, एक दिन उल्टा करेंगे. ऐसे ही है, इतना है. So we go on. Is it not everything the same? We go on and speak to the same people, the same family. We go to the office, do the same work, coming back. It is always repeatedly we are doing the same boring work. We don't feel bored. Now, by this same thing doing repeatedly so many hours of the day, are we not imbibing more and more of fragmentation, smallness, selfishness? Because all these things are crystallizing the smallness and the separatedness, the fragmentedness of the world. So through all our actions, always that fragmentation gets consolidated. How to treat that fragmentation of the mind and intelligence? You have to repeatedly pounce the mind, pounding the mind, just like with the bullets, pounding the mind with the oneness. How will the fragmentation go? By the uniformity, by the universality, by the oneness. This is how, that is why they repeat. So whenever there is repetition, don't neglect it, thinking that, oh, ye kuch nahi hai. By repeatedly contemplating, they want us to contemplate on that concept repeatedly. By that our mind will undergo a change. As far as understanding or knowing is concerned, there is not much. So I will skip them. But suppose you study the Upanishad, Don't skip them. In teaching, I will skip because there is not much to say. But actually, when we go deep into it, and in the ashram, as we do say, each word we explain, going into the etymology and all the philosophical depth, then each shloka becomes very powerful. That is another way, because that each shloka we are utilizing for expanding our mind. We are doing the sadhana with each shloka. So, you should know that in your study of the scriptures, you have to think about it. Take one shloka, go on ruminating, repeating, and if you can chant, that will be very good. If you can chant loudly, you will find that the sound itself has got a great pacifying, sublimating effect on us. So, certain things the Upanishads always emphasize to treat our mindset which is suffering from defects.